Hi, today we're going to show you how to make a lining for a coat. And if you've ever haven't made a lining for a coat or a coat, the best way to start is really with a doll pattern. I have a Simplicity 3551 and I've picked this coat here. But that coat does not show you how to make a lining for it, but just like real coats, I like lining. So I picked a cotton that I like, and you can see how limp it is. It just doesn't hold its shape. So we're going to interface that with a medium weight interfacing. And then I picked satin for my lining. This is normal, what is used for linings, and there are some special little things you probably need to know about that. And then I'm thinking about using a nice fur for the collar. It's a fake fur. And in the end, we'll make us a coat like this with a lining. Easy on, easy off. And this is a good tutorial for those who are beginners wanting to make a real coat for themselves without spending a lot of money. So I laid my pattern pieces out because I had a fat quarter, but I used some of the material already out of it for something. So I laid my pattern pieces out to see if I had enough, and that's a good idea to start. Okay, so I have cut out my fabric pieces, and I'm getting ready to move on to the interfacing. But first, I want to mark a few things on my pattern. Now, I've made this pattern a couple of times already, and this pattern here has a large circle, and these here represent the buttons on the original pattern. I'm not going to mark these little buttons because my lining's going to make a bit more bulk than the original coat, and most likely I won't be able to use 6 buttons, but this big circle here will help me to place the facing around and the collar. So on the market they have lots of wonderful marking pencils. The old-timers, like when we started, we used a wheel and we put carbon paper underneath, and we even rolled around all the seam markings. But the seam will tell you it's 3/8 all around. So if you keep that in mind, you don't have to bother marking with a wheel. 3/8. Just make sure you stitch 3/8 from the edge. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to explain for beginners is even on adult sleeves, these little dots and this is on a gathering sleeve that you're going to gather, they're all in the same place. You have your arrow mark, which you're going to cut out to help you mark placement, and again here you make a little arrow, and then if you just keep this in mind, it's about maybe an inch from those marks. You have your top and your 2 sides. So I don't mark these either, but you're more than willing to mark. I'm going to use, because of the light colored fabric, I do have a standard real marker for clothes, but I'm using a white charcoal pencil. It's like a piece of chalk. And how I do that is my big circle, I stick a pin through it, and on this particular pattern, not everything's all the same, I cut with my fabric facing me, and it's really what I want on the collar. I want to mark where I'm looking at it. So I stick that pin through that circle, I lift up the paper, and I mark a little circle or an X, whatever I can refer to later and hopefully see. So it's just a helpful marks. So now that I'm marked, I'm going to take all the paper off all the patterns and start again with my mid-weight interfacing. And one other thing, if you're new and a beginner and this 3/8 seam and you're having a hard time keeping a straight line, use dark colors because they'll hide your mistakes better than a light color when you're starting out. So on the interfacing, I'm cutting the collar at the moment, and you see those little dart things. I'm not including them on my interfacing because I'm just going to iron this on. And as you get better, they actually want you to cut that after it's cut out closer to where you're sewing. But I'm not going to do that either. And as for a beginner, I don't recommend you do it either. Also with the collar, if it was going to be, I'm going to do the fur for the top piece of fabric, and then I'm going to cut one, and that's where I'll iron my interfacing, and then I'm going to make the lining underneath, or you could have used fabric. Now, if you have it, for the facing around the coat and for the sleeves, I'm going to use a lightweight interfacing. But if you don't have it, just carry on. So I'm at my satin, and I have some special pins, some silk pins. They won't leave big holes in your material as a regular pin would for finer material. If not, use your regular pins. Don't worry about it. Try to do a lot of your pinning in the seam allowance, and that'll help you out. But other than that, you just got to do what you got to do. Okay, so we have our 3 piles of our fabric, our interfacing, our lining. And I just want to mention a couple of things. I keep my patterns usually in a big bag of the same pattern. But as you're sewing, you might want to keep them around for reference. Maybe there was something you missed in reading. Maybe you just wanted to see the pattern with the markings again. But they're good to have around and handy. So now that you're done with that, you're probably ready for a break. And I suggest you go take one. When we get back, we'll do the ironing, which also brings me a little reminder. I hope you pre-wash your main fabric before you use it. Just wash it by itself, dry it lightly, iron it, and store it away for when you want to use it. It really does come in handy. You can cut off you'll have some fraying and stuff. So I don't suggest large loads of new fabric all at once, but definitely give them a little wash. So as a beginner, you are going to get tired quicker because it's just all new to you. So now we're going to fuse our fabric with the iron-on fusible interfacing. And find the piece. You'll notice it has bumps. That's the side with the glue, and that's going to go down on the wrong side of your fabric. Now the manufacturer's directions say steam your iron and go over. Well, to me, I don't put steam in my iron. So you can use bottled water. I have some wrinkle releaser in a bottle, and I'm using it for no other reason than it's liquid. I've got my iron up on cotton, and I'm just going to press, and it kind of dries up the spray I put on there generously. You can use an old pillowcase or regular, but they kind of get marked up after spraying over and over again. This is a clean cloth, but doesn't look like it. So now you remember the limp material we started with in the beginning. Well, here. Limp. And this is what interfacing does. It just gives it your material some body, and sometimes you need it. So let's continue ironing. So now you have it all complete and everything looks beautiful, and you're like getting really excited because now you can kind of see the end product if everything goes well. And you should be proud of yourself. You just completed the beginning of your coat.